Hello, this is Mike Madden and you're listening to the Arts Show podcast. Here you will find interviews with artists, musicians, authors and anyone else in and around the arts. Some of the interviews are recorded direct from the Arts Show on Expat Radio, with one or two specials in between. This episode features romantic comedy author Maddie Please talking about her latest book, The Mini Break. We also discuss writing workshops and she tells us about the inspirations behind her work. It was originally broadcast on Expat Radio on Monday the 4th of March. Due to licensing restrictions, we were unable to play the songs from the original broadcast. Well, good evening, everybody. This is Mike Madden on the Arts Show on Expat Radio. And in the recent weeks, we've had an awful lot of authors who've come on to tell us about their crime thrillers and murders and all that kind of stuff. Well, tonight we're going to take a totally different direction. I'd like to welcome to the show Maddie Please. Good evening, Maddie.
Hello, and thank you for having me on the show.
How's the Skype working? I know you're a bit nervous about it.
I can't see. Can you see me? I can see you.
We're on the radio, so it doesn't really matter. Maddie is just about to launch her latest book, The Mini Break, and she's a romantic comedy writer. So this book has a strapline of Lulu has it all, a romance writer at the height of her career. So would you like to expand on that? And is it really about yourself?
No. The thought struck me is you've got so many very successful writers, but writer's block is always something that people are going on about and worrying about. And what happens if you get writer's block and your publisher and your editor and your readers are expecting a book from you and you're not really getting anywhere with it? So this sort of made me think about what would happen if that were the case, and how would somebody who was a successful all around the world sort of writer suddenly couldn't write anything, and she was messing about with it and faffing around with the story and finding herself getting nowhere. So for various reasons she decides to take a mini break to get away from her very busy and glitzy life in London, and from her partner at the time, who is increasingly annoying her. So she feels that she needs a break from both London and from him. So she goes to Devon. And she goes with her sister, and it's not a particularly successful trip because it's just so different from what she's used to. So the story then follows how she goes back to London and she's picking backwards and forwards on elastic because she can't settle anywhere. And eventually she decides that the life in Devon is something that she rather takes to. And also the other big thing about this story is that she's written so many books about romance and falling in love and being happy ever after, but she's never actually been in love herself. So she's sort of writing blind about something that she really doesn't understand properly. But then she falls in love. Right.
So that's a great synopsis. Now, of course, another part about this, which is similar to yourself, is you live down in Devon as well, don't you?
I do. I live in between Exeter and Crediton.
And it's a wonderful part of the world. You moved to Devon, and you built a garden office. That must be really something. I think there'd be a lot of writers listening in here who would be envious of that.
Well, this is a thing that was the first thing we ever did when we moved here. Was we decided that we needed somewhere to write, and we got a local firm, in fact, from Dorset, who came and did it literally in 3 weeks, from breaking the ground to us moving all our stuff in. And it was just a fantastic addition to our working lives. My husband works from home, mostly from home, and it's a writing space for me and it's a workspace for him, and it works brilliantly well.
And presumably it's fully kitted out with electricity, Wi-Fi.
It's got it's got absolutely everything we need, and it's got the space, and we've got our desks in there, and we're in there just about every day.
And you've got the radio tuned to Radio Devon. I'm sure you'll now switch it to Expat Radio.
Absolutely. Well, it
But
was funny, actually. I was listening to your program earlier on, and you played one of my favourite records, which is Eye in the Sky, the Albums Project. And I thought, perhaps this is the radio station for me.
so for all of you listening in for the first time, just listen to what Maddie says there, and let's have you listening again. Now, this is not your first book. Your debut came out the summer of Second Chances.
Yes.
And it was a direct result of Chris Manby's plotting workshop. Now, we have a lot of people talking about workshops. Just explain that one.
Well, my best friend Jane and I decided we would like to sort of try and organise some writing retreats, because they're a very enjoyable way to get into your writing away from domestic things and sometimes away from the pull of job or family. And we'd organised this one down in Cornwall, and Chris Manby, who's a very well known and very well loved author, came with us as the talent. And she was going to give us a plotting workshop, which she did, and it changed everything as far as I was concerned, because quite often you can start writing a book and you get to the point and you think, I'm not quite sure where I'm going. I'm not sure where this is going. And the plot isn't playing ball. The characters are doing something I don't want them to. And she taught me how to plot using a grid system, and I've used it ever since. So because of that, we were sitting there and we were brainstorming, and each of us was working out a plot. And the plot that I came up with then was the plot that then turned into Summer of Second Chances.
Right, so it was a real revelation for you. And I know that yourself and Jane put lots of workshops together. Are they all different subjects?
Yes. We're due to go on one next week, which is more like a get-together of some friends who are all writers and all at various stages. But we've all met through social media and then met up actually, together to have lunch and that sort of thing. And we've decided we'd like to do another one. So we're meeting up next week somewhere near Hereford. And sometimes there is what we think of as the talent, the person who is the published writer or that sort of thing. And sometimes it's just writing. But either way, it's a very enjoyable way to sort of bounce ideas off each other or just be left alone to get on with it. And yes, I would thoroughly recommend them.
It sounds like these would be wonderful days like these, and we're going to now go to a break with Matt Munro and Days Like These.
Right, we're back live with you, sir.
Good evening again. This is Mike Madden on the Arts Show on Expat Radio, and tonight I'm talking to a romantic comedy writer, Maddie Please, and we just spoke about her latest book, The Mini Break. But Maddie, this is actually your fourth book to be published. You had two out last year, as well as the Summer of Second Chances that we spoke about. So you must be quite a veteran of launch days now. Have you got anything planned for this one?
No, it's the quick answer to that. It's the very quick answer to that. Not really. It's the digital book comes out at the end of this month on the 21st of March, and then the actual physical book comes out in May. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, won't we? I don't know. I haven't really got anything particularly planned for this. No.
Have all your books been what Avon called digital first, or have you actually had some paperbacks out first?
No, they've all been. There seems to be more the way that it's going. To be honest with you, the way it sort of comes out at digital, because obviously it's far quicker to get a book out onto Amazon or Kobo or NetGalley or BookBub than it is to get a physical book out into the shops. So it seems to be the norm these days, certainly with Avon, that they bring the book out as a digital first, and after that into a paperback.
Yeah, I suppose that is a little bit more difficult to have a launch event because you've got nothing to sign.
No. Although there's always that exciting moment when the box of books comes through the door, and
yes, that first, I guess the look of the first time you get to see the cover, and then obviously getting the physical book in your hands must be quite exciting.
It is. It's very exciting, actually. Yes. It's quite a emotional moment.
So have you actually? I guess you won't have received your latest one because that's not coming out till May.
No, not yet. I should get one before too long, but I certainly haven't had one yet. No.
So before the break, we also touched on writing groups, and you particularly like the plotting workshop. But they do cover other things. So what's another one that you would particularly recommend or you particularly enjoyed?
Now, the one that I found was extremely good was something which is internet-based through the Writers' Workshop. There's a self-editing course for people who have either finished a first draft of a book or are just about there and feel they need a bit of advice as to how to knock it into shape. And that was Debbie Alper and Emma Darwin. And that was a 6-week course, purely internet-based, which was just worth its weight in gold. I would recommend it to anybody. Yeah. And
did you, on an internet-based one, I guess you're working alone with your sort of tutors in the background, or do you actually get into a group and still exchange ideas?
Exactly, yes. There's a group of, I think it was probably about 12 or 13 of us, and through the sort of magic of the internet, we were managed to have a closed group where we could share ideas and put up bits for people to have a look at and critique, and we could look at their work and give us some advice. It just worked brilliantly, and there were modules to work through every week for 6 weeks. So you had to devote quite a lot of time to it, and it was like most things, the more you put into it, the more you got out of it. But they have a very high success rate when it comes to getting people through to either the bitter end of a first draft or to edit it into a publishable shape. So yeah, they're very good at what they do, and it's a course I always recommend to people if they're interested in that sort of thing.
Now, you and your friend Jane organise quite a lot of these writing workshops and writing retreats. And I did notice something unusual, that when I see reviews of these, one of the things that stands out is the cooking. So who actually does that?
Well, we do. Jane and I do. Jane is an extremely good cook, and I'm a good sous chef, really. So we do everything. That's the whole point, you see, because most people have got to get a meal for somebody in the family, or they've got to do the clearing up, or they've got laundry, or they've got domestic chores that they can't really ignore, or conversely, things that are a wonderful distraction away from banging out words. So we do it all.
Right.
So we do it all. That's part of the pleasure for the people who come, is that they don't have to do anything.
And they can just focus entirely on their creative writing.
That's exactly right, yes.
And I did also see that one of them was up near me in Derbyshire. So how do you decide where you're going to hold these?
Well, it's a place that is big enough for the numbers. Derbyshire was a very big group of people. I think at one point we had about 12 people there, which is quite a lot to cater for. And we just wanted somewhere where people could get to fairly easily. And that seemed to fit the bill. It was, I'm trying to remember the name of the place. It was near Edenshaw, not very far from Chatsworth.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous farmhouse. And we had some of the heaviest rain I've ever in my life seen when we were there. It was torrential. It was quite startling. But the house itself, you need somewhere where you've got little areas where people can just go away on their own and find themselves a little nook to sit in and do their writing. And this house sort of fitted the bill. And you had to have enough bedrooms, and you don't want anywhere with bunk beds, because nobody wants to sleep in a bunk bed if they don't have to. So yes, it's sometimes easy to find somewhere in an area that's sometimes quite difficult.
Obviously, you're quite successful at these, and there will be more in the future. But let's go back to the beginning of your writing career now. And you were quite fortunate in that you got an agent. So just explain the process as to how you went about getting that agent and what happened thereafter.
Well, it's a question of persistence, I think. And I mean, the book that I had published as my debut, as my first book, was in fact my 8th book, because I'd already written another, 7 full-length books, which will never see the light of day unless they have some serious surgery on them. And we got to this point where I'd produced this, gone through the self-edit course, and was not confident, because I don't think you're ever really confident, but you send it out to people, send it out to agents, And sometimes you get a polite reply. Sometimes you get a standard no thank you. Sometimes you never hear from them again. So you just have to be persistent. And I'm a great believer in that when it comes to the publishing industry. Nothing succeeds like persistence. I mean, obviously you've got to give them something they want, but basically what you're doing is saying, I've got something you can sell. And they will then say, oh, no, you haven't actually. It's rubbish. Or they might very well say, yeah, okay, I can see something in that. Anyway, I sent out a Summer of Second Chances to, I think, probably about 10 different agents. And Annette Green got back to me extremely quickly and said, can I see the rest of it? Because you send out a letter and a synopsis and the first 3 chapters. She got back to me within a couple of days. And she said, can I see the rest of it? So I sent it to her and she said, yes, we'll have a phone call. So I can remember now, she phoned me up and I was having this conversation with her about the book. And she asked me about what I had. The next thing is, what else have you got that I could possibly see? And so I said to her, well, I've got other things that I can think about and I've got plans for this, that and the other in the future. Because they want to know that you're not just a one-trick pony, that you've got one book in you and then you're going to disappear.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough. So anyway, then she said, oh, well, what we need to do is so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. We need to do this, we need to do that. We need to, I know exactly who I'm going to approach with this. And there was this pause in the conversation and I said to her, does that mean you're going to be my agent? And she said, well, of course I am. And that's when it struck me, whoa, and the next thing you know, there's a contract comes through and she signs it, I sign it, and off we go. So, but that, as I said, that was my 8th book. So it's not exactly I dashed this book off and off we go. It was a long haul, I think you'd called it. But
so
go on.
Had you actually submitted the previous 7 books to agencies as well?
Some of them, and then, we can tell what the result of that was because they're still sitting on the hard drive. So I didn't get anywhere with them, but I look back at them now and I think, well, of course you didn't, because they're not very good. You have to learn it. It's like anything else. You have to learn how to do it. And even when she got me she got me a 2-book deal with Avon. And Avon sort of eventually took this up and said, yes, we love it. And there's always a sort of a way that they will say something nice and then in the middle they'll say, but.
Yes.
We love this book. It's just the funniest thing we've ever read and it's just terrific and it's marvellous. But, and in this case, the but was, we want you to take out the first 7 chapters and feed them in his backstory and start at chapter 8.
It's a fairly hefty edit then.
Oh, a fairly hefty edit. So I thought, well, the first thing is, yes, of course I shall do that. But then you start doing it, and I'm thinking, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. How do I do this? Anyway, persistence works. So you do what you're told, send it back to them, and they say, yes, it's absolutely marvellous. It's just terrific. It's just marvellous. We love it to death. But...
that word again.
That word comes in. But eventually they sort of said yes, they were going to go forward with it, and they wanted the next one, which was Year of New Adventures. So basically, you're in the hands of the people at Avon, and I've had some. In fact, you had Phoebe Morgan on, and she was the commissioning editor who took this book up from me, and then I was passed on to editors to knock it into its final shape. And I've had some fantastic people from Avon who've worked, Rachel and Victoria and Kate, Katie have all done incredible amounts of work with me and helped me so much. And they're also enthusiastic and kind. And you think, well, this is what you need. So I have been very fortunate in the team that I've been working with.
I think it's a very good point as well. And we get it every week that the finished book that you see on the bookshelves or you download off Amazon onto your Kindle, when you've got the juggernaut of Avon behind you, it's actually more of a collaboration than just yourself. You don't feel alone when you're doing it.
Well, that's true. And the fact of the matter is, although to me they all seem, they're all very, very young and attractive and enthusiastic, they know what they're doing. That's the thing. I don't know where they get these young women from. There must be a pool of them somewhere, but they're just so good at their job that you can't disagree with them too much. Although if there are certain points, then yeah, you can kick back a little bit. But they know what they're doing. And certainly when I brought out Summer of Second Chances, I hadn't got a clue what the process was or how to react to what they said. And they've been marvellous. They really have.
Now, we touched earlier about getting writer's block, one of your leading characters. You've come to the realisation that although you love writing, it is still a job. And it's a great quote from yourself that occasionally a pile of ironing looks like a really fun alternative.
Oh, yes, and those worktops need polishing. Yeah, absolutely. You think, gosh, I'm just going to take a little break from this. And then you realise what you're doing, and you're just procrastinating and making excuses to not get on with it, basically, because you've just got to get the words down. You've got to get the story finished.
One of your books is about a cruise, and you say you love going on cruises. You love listening to the radio, so you get inspiration from those kinds of things, and also moving to Devon. But do you get any inspiration from your first job, which was as a dentist?
No. Well, Jane and I were both dentists together. We had a practice together in Monmouth. And we had a lot of fun. It doesn't sound like a very fun job, but in fact it was a really nice place to work, and we had a lot of fun. And I was a dentist for 30 plus years, and we sold the practice, and we both decided we'd do something else. And people say, well, do you miss it? And we think, no, of course I don't miss it. Don't be daft. I've done 30 years plus of dentistry. I want to do something different. But I cannot really believe that I could write a romantic comedy with a dentist as a main character, because I don't think anybody would be interested. Although lots of dentists are extremely nice people, they're not what you might call a classic romantic lead, are they?
No, and just the very word dentist conjures up demons, and dental hygienist, it just sounds so clinical. It's not romantic at all. It's
not romantic. Well, there you are. So no, I don't get much inspiration from that. No, to be honest with you.
Now, one place you did get inspiration was the Cheltenham Literary Festival writing course, where you were in a sort of a sideshow, and a literary agent said that to become a writer, you first got to write 1 million words.
That's about right.
And that may seem a huge mountain to climb, but I guess with your 9 full-length books and short stories, you can't be far off that.
Well, that was it. I mean, I can remember sitting there listening to this and thinking, well, that's impossible. Nobody can write that much and not be confident that they're going to get somewhere with it as a career. But when you look back at the sort of short stories and the things you write, the books you start and don't finish, and the books you start and do finish, it's amazing, actually, how you can say, yes, I have written 1 million words to get to this point, probably more than 1 million now.
And it's the old adage of practice makes perfect, and the analogy in sport is that it takes 10,000 hours to perfect something, which is a huge amount of commitment.
Yeah, you're right.
So you also recommend writing festivals, particularly the Writing Festival of York. So just explain what goes on at those, because I think that would be new to a lot of our listeners.
Oh, now that takes place usually in the first weekend of September every year. And it's something that is based around the university campus in York, which is a very nice campus. And you sort of stay in the student accommodation, and you have lectures and workshops and what are called one-to-ones, where you can opt to have a piece of your work you submitted early to sometimes you've got publishers or agents or literary or book doctors or people in the know as far as publishing is concerned, and you send them a piece of your work, and you meet up with them at a set time in order to discuss it. And they will sort of tell you, well, this is okay, you could do more with this, or you might try thinking along these lines. And it's invaluable because you get a professional's take on your work. What I will say is that I've been twice, and would, yes, you're right, I would highly recommend going. You meet people as well, because it's a cliche, but writing is a very lonely profession, basically, because you're just talking to your imaginary friends all day, and it's very nice to meet up with other writers who understand the lure of a pile of ironing, or they understand the fact that you perhaps you've had a bit of a problem, or you've not been very well and you've fallen behind or something like that, and you need a little bit of a G up. And the Festival of Writing in York is a very good place to do that. And you get some exceptionally good workshops, which are well worth going to. What I would say is you need to wear running shoes, because you're rushing around from one lecture or one workshop to another. And you take your own pillow, because the pillows they provide in student accommodation are like Weetabix.
I did look at the timetable. I think it was for last year's, and it is certainly packed in for it can be 4 days, can't it, in total?
Yeah. Go on. Yes. It's well worth going to. And you meet some very nice people there, and learn a lot about a lot of different things.
Now, you're obviously a successful romantic comedy author, but in the past you've done paranormal romance, historical, and contemporary fiction. How did you eventually come across the genre you've settled on, and can you ever sort of see yourself going back?
Well, my first love when I was reading rather than writing was historical fiction. Start off with things like Jean Plaidy and go on to Philip Gregory and Hilary Mantel, that type of thing. Anything to do with the Tudors, I'm very interested in. Daphne du Maurier was another favourite, that type of thing. But I tried writing a historical novel. It was terrible, because I just don't. You have to get the right voice. You can't just put in a few these and thous and my lord and all this sort of stuff. It's got to sound correct. It's got to sound convincing, and I just didn't have the voice for it. And voice is a very important thing when you're writing, to get your reader convinced that you know what you're talking about. Now, as far as romantic comedy was concerned, I like making people laugh, you see, and I always have done. And it just happened. It just suddenly clicked. And I realised that I could write this, but also put in some funny bits. Because really, if you think about it, relationships are quite often very funny. And certainly the process of falling in love and having a relationship with somebody can be hilarious. It can. It's not always, obviously, but sometimes it's not. But it just struck me as being something that I could perhaps have a go at. And so I did.
And very successfully.
Oh.
Now, we're sadly running out of time now. So before we go, would you just like to tell our listeners where they can find out more about yourself and your writing, and when they can expect to see Mini Break hit the shelves?
Right. Well, I have a website, maddiePlease.co.uk. I'm on Twitter as Maddie Please 1. I am on Facebook as Maddie Please. And the best and quickest way to find me is to type my name into Amazon, and then they will all come up.
They will indeed. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, and hopefully you'll come back and tell us about book number 5.
Well, book number 5 is practically written, so I haven't got a name yet. I'm not very good at titles, you see, and I will put a working title on something, and then the publishers will say, "We love that title, but..."
Is that but again?
Is that but again? And then they will retitle it, and they're always right. So I can't complain.
Well, they might change the title, but they won't change your name on the cover. So that's what counts.
Exactly right. Exactly.
It's been a wonderful more than half hour now. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh gosh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And I guess your writing is part of Every Breath You Take, and we're going to play out with the Police in Every Breath You Take. You've been listening to the Arts Show podcast with Mike Madden. Come back soon for more artists, authors, musicians and anyone else connected with the arts. We're going to play out with Mike Sanchez and I Don't Stand a Chance.
Baby, you hiding something that you don't want me to know, because Because I'm getting a vibe from way down the side, like you're just about ready to go. And you can't tell me where you stayed last night. You just can't cope with treating me right. I'm on the road to heartbreak. Now's the time to tell me so. Because I'm getting a chill, like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I said goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. Tell me so, because I'm getting a chill, like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. No, I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I'll say goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance, baby. I don't stand a chance.